Welcome, everyone, and excited to have you with us on this new project of ours about the deep dive into the Black Madonna by Kult Divinity Lost. One of these infamous and celebrated campaign that Helmgast now has re-released um, a while back, but I think it still hasn't changed its interest. I'm David, and with me is my friend and co-host Martin. And yeah, you find both of us probably at Illusion Horror. I'm one of the organizers of the Illusion Horror and Con that happens in December 5th to 7th this year for the fourth time, unbelievably. And we're very excited. And yeah, you can find me otherwise on every other social platform as Bitbook Chef. But Martin, where can people find you?
Yes, so the best place is probably the Illusion Horror Con Discord. To be perfectly honest, but I'm on the Cult Discord as well, obviously. So if you hang out at the two most important places on the internet, I mean, you can find me there. Talking about cult lore, probably.
Most likely. Very, very considerably. Yeah, so we both are running also the Black Madonna for our players in individual groups. I'm a bit further along than Martin is, but we thought that is a slight benefit of creating maybe something that allows us to talk about this from a GM perspective, as it is one of the bigger and more intricate campaigns I think there is for the cult universe, besides Legions of Darkness and others. But we one step at a time. I want to say, if you're a player or if you intend to play the game, don't continue to watch because we will spoil you as we are talking about everything in the details and the background of it. Feel free to share, however, the video with your GM or anyone that you want it to run. Maybe he gets inspired if we do a good job. I hope we do. And we'll be able to kind of give you the opportunity to play it at some point. Martin.
Yes, and we should say that our goal with this series is to support GMs who want to run the Black Madonna in Cult Divinity Lost, which is a system that's far more narrative-driven than the original 1990s version, which I guess is fair to say leaned a bit heavier into combat and that kind of thing. And we will talk about how to adapt and play the campaign, what challenges to expect, and how to bring the horror history and metaphysics to life at your table.
Ooh, fantastic. I do want to stress the other point before we go any further, and that is a content warning. The Black Madonna is probably one of the worst and darkest campaign I've read and now played. It contains various themes of trauma, harm to children, war, abuse, death, religious imagery, gore, body horror. Basically a classic cult campaign that is going a bit wild. Also written in the 90s by Swedish authors, so you can imagine it can go pretty dark. Our discussions will potentially reach certain of these topics and subjects. We don't try to be graphic. We might give example of how to incorporate these, but please be adult enough and be a careful listener and decide for yourself if something is uncomfortable. Just stop and skip, maybe forward, or just skip the episode then. We're sorry, but we try to provide trigger warnings when possible and make sure that you are aware of those.
And we also want to make it clear that this podcast of us is a fan project, so we are not officially affiliated with Helmcast or with the original authors of Cult. We're simply sharing our experiences and interpretations and advice for running the Black Madonna with the Cult Divinity Lost rule set.
Exactly. And yeah, I guess, Martin, today in our first episode, we'll probably go a bit broader than in further episodes. I think we want to start a bit what makes it so unique as a campaign. Why is it still relevant and why is it still being played? How has it been adapted over the years? What are maybe some challenges ourselves saw in the initial first read-through? We're also exploring a bit of the historical background in the early 90s in Europe and kind of the understanding of how society was. Maybe even touch a bit on our arch nemesis, the Death Angel, Chagdigel, and his counterpart, Binah. And yeah, overall, we'll try to set a bit the idea of what the Black Madonna is all about.
Yes, and in future episodes, we will drill deeper with exploring Chigidiel and Bina, discussing maybe the opening hook, the structure of particular sessions and chapters, and the key NPCs. But today, it's all about getting our bearings and sort of setting the stage for what's to come.
Exactly. And I think without further much ado, let's step into the shadows of post-Cold War Europe and let's talk about the Black Madonna. And let me ask this directly to my co-host, Martin, why the Black Madonna?
Why the Black Madonna? Yeah, because well, I said for the longest time that I was not gonna tackle the Black Madonna. I think David, I think you can probably recall like a Discord thread like less than a year ago where
Oh, yes.
you were talking about the Black Madonna. I was like, no, 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 I'm not doing it, never. And then of course I GM or guest GM, I guess, for a long running cult group here with some people who have played the original cults like back in the day. I didn't. I only well, when I started out, I only knew about it. I heard about it, but I never actually played it. And through some subterfuge and some convincing, they sort of nudged me. Like, of course, we would love for you to run something else for us again. Maybe the Black Madonna. Yeah, and then when it starts coming in from every side, Black Madonna, of course, is like one of the two original cult adventures or writings that I actually knew the title of before, like before Divinity Lost came out. The other one was Et in Arcadia Ego, which is of course also it's less ambitious, but it's also a wonderful and kind of provocative scenario. So yeah, because it's a classic,
Yeah.
I guess is the long-winded the long-winded answer to the question boils down to it's a classic.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I think, yeah, it was a interesting discussion where a lot of people actually chimed in, either convincing you to run it or even asking about specifics about their GM to run it. And I think, when was it? In January or no, later this, or in the past year, the monthly cult drops by Helmgast. Cult drop number 31 actually concerned about the Black Madonna, where Petter met Gunilla and Mikko in Stockholm in their apartment, and he tells a beautiful tale of what they had to say about why the Black Madonna is still relevant. It is for free. The links will be in the description if you want to read up on that. And yeah, I think from me perspective, personally also, it came from a high interest into Cult of Divinity Lost after finding several players who decided, well, we want to explore a bit more deeper, darker themes. And I was lucky enough to find a group of players that pretty much have no limits in a role-playing perspective. And it was very fun to have the opportunity to say, what about if we play Black Madonna? It will take a while, but I think you're gonna like it. And well, I think honestly, it was actually decided for me because I brought this up a while back, but then two of the players talked amongst themselves, or three of the players talked amongst themselves that they would love to run Black Madonna, but they didn't know enough about the German state and the setting, and well, they knew me, so it was a quick question of, can you run Black Madonna for us? And well, there we are. 35 sessions in now, over a year of gameplay. It's been fantastic, disastrous, and very disturbing at some points. Then again, it is intended that way. that leads us to kind of the first big question. What is even the Black Madonna, Martin? I think we talked about so much about the Black Madonna. Is it the Orthodox iconography that we see in so many churches? Or I think here, even in Croatia, we have the Black Madonna, not even too far from my hometown. Who knows?
Mm.
But
The only one I've seen is the one in Montserrat in Catalonia. They have one as
oh,
well.
yeah.
But, yeah, I mean it is that, right? Literally as well, because of course the sort of the Madonna image and iconography plays an important part of it, right? But
Mhm.
how do you summarize it? It's an epic campaign about the death of God, maybe is the way the authors
All
frame it.
Yeah, all hopes lost. Death, God is dead by the atrocities of World War II. Um,
And I guess he to summarize let me give a shot at summarizing the core story, and then when I inevitably fail, maybe you can try
please
as
go
well
ahead.
and see. I mean, we begin in 1991 actually, which is of course at the time contemporary times, and now I guess historical as well. But the key events are still during the siege of Leningrad. Um, and the way the story is told is through a bunch of dreams, echoes through time, and flashbacks. Because of course, history is never just history. It's always there, especially in the mythology of cult. Everything in a certain way is happening at the same time everywhere at once, kind of. So we gradually unravel the backstory of a few people who were orphans after after the siege of Leningrad, then ended up through a series of awful events in Germany. And it turns out that three of them harbor, I suppose, the seeds of demons inside of them, whereas the fourth um, played like a pivotal part in back in the 1940s as a vessel for well, I love that Binah is described as the archangel of Russia in a
Exactly.
euphemism in the text, but a an archon in the mythology of cults. So we have the conflict between an archon and a death angel, but they are represented, of course, by these children who have now grown into adults and into fairly old people. Um, that doesn't actually get at the plot that much, but
That sets
to
the
me,
scene quite right,
that
yeah.
is what the Black Madonna is about. Like how this Death Angel Chedgidiel is trying to use people to sort of, well, bring himself more concretely into our world, sort of get a foothold. And he was held back in the 1940s during the siege of Leningrad, but perhaps he will succeed now, unless our brave player characters step up and leave their mundane lives to fight against and, well, with and against mythical powers that they don't understand.
Yeah.
Sort of.
I think that's a great summary of kind of, I think, the back end and the whole bone of the scenario. And I would go even further and say that the Black Madonna is about a story that you play with your characters and see their development. It is their unraveling into madness, into chaos, into desperation. You see them making decisions. They regret decisions. They're being lied upon. They're being manipulated. Um, it is a beautiful, yeah, character development story that you as a GM can witness, can guide, and kind of organize a bit. All starting for players who meet Magda Oliver, a 60-year-old woman that, as said before, um, was the fourth counterpart to these Chagdigiel incarnates. And it all starts very calmly at a author's ball in Hamburg in September of 91. And, well, let's just say that meeting with their old friend, from the character's perspective, puts them in a spot in the world that they kind of need to find their way out from. And over the course of, well, in my case, it's only a few months now, a month since it actually started, but a lot has happened, and a lot of disastrous things happened. And the downfall of the characters is, well, let's say it's not clear really who the monsters are anymore in the story. And that's what I think is what Black Madonna makes it out. Yes, you fight in dream worlds, you fight in the real world, you fight in the past, you fight in Inferno. You investigate, you try to figure things out about a machinery that works beyond your scope of understanding of what the world even is. And all to the extent that you have a clock ticking that is working against you because the characters are infected with their meeting with their old friend. And yeah, I think that is my summary of Black Madonna, because I think, as you should rightfully and nicely described the background, it's from the perspective when the game starts, it's all about the characters. They see the world as it is initially, but quickly realize there's a deeper truth to everything. And well, yeah, it's kind of a whirlwind too when you read the book for the first time. You travel within Germany, then you go to Moscow, you go to Dreamlands, you go to Inferno, you go infiltrate missile bases. Like, it is going beyond and absolute crazy. But it's also interesting, I feel like. And yeah, definitely rewarding. It is, I would say, a huge investment from both the players and the GM. You definitely need to make that clear from the get-go. It is not a short campaign that you finish in 10 sessions or so. It definitely will take longer. If you can finish it in 10 sessions, please email us and how you did it, because I'm highly curious to see how that went. But yeah, I think for me, The Black Madonna is a narrative story that is a framework, as you described in Martin, of chaos and strangeness, but it is about character exploration. And that's one of the things that these chaotic events happened in the 90s, right? And Mikkel and Gunilla, the original authors, wrote it in the 90s, just before the Soviet Union even collapsed, and pretty much predicted maybe some of it, as we discussed a bit earlier. So I think, yeah, I'm starting to ramble, am I? Martin, any other additions you have for what the Black Madonna is?
I guess a couple of bouncing off a couple of the things that you said, because you know, when you read it, it's already a wild ride. But then when you run it, and also if you listen to some of the excellent recorded versions that exist, I mean, something that struck me, for example, with we start with the opening scenes with the meeting with Magda Orlova, etc. And in the book, because a campaign writing is kind of technical writing, so it reads relatively dryly. You meet Magda, and Magda looks this or that. She looks ill. She is wearing gloves, etc., etc. But with relatively little preparation, I mean, we had made sure in character creation that all our characters had some kind of relation to Magda, sort of like, so that are actually brought together, and it turned surprisingly emotional. Already from the get-go, you meeting this like old friend, and one of them, an old flame in one case, or a sort of kind of auntie motherly kind of figure in one way, and one case, and and they it sort of pops off the page and becomes sort of personal relatively quickly, which I really like.
Now, I do have to kind of poke a bit on that point, but it is also interesting because you have the probable nice reunion, but then you have these other three friends of Magda who are kind of standing or sitting around and looking at the characters frightened,
Yes.
almost terrified. It's beautiful imagery. All under the pretense of a author's ball,
Yes.
and yeah, the scenery of a large, massive building, the Hamburg Festsaal. Yeah, it's
And that is also bringing in another, I mean, immediately another of, I think, the recurring themes. We're going to get to that. What are the themes and so on? But these like men who you know, maybe one of the player characters vaguely recognize them or know like one of them, something like that. But it's not people you know who are suddenly out of the blue seems to be deathly frightened by you.
mm-hmm.
And what will later turn out for good reason. Right,
Exactly.
because they have had these dreams and premonitions and so on. That also sets up something that's going to be recurring throughout the campaign. This sort of fear, kind of paranoia brackets, possibly justified end brackets, that goes through a lot of things, including like how these like key NPCs like react to you or to the players, the player characters.
Yeah, and I think we'll leave that as a general overview for maybe
Yes,
what is
yes.
the Black Madonna, because if we would read it verbatim, we have 16 pages of backstory starting at 1941 at the Siege of Leningrad that we need to get through, and I don't think we have the time for that today. As we just said, the initial scene, the opening in itself is quite already emotional. It is strange, and one of the things that comes to mind is obviously the location, which is Germany in 1991, September, a few months before the Soviet Union will collapse. It is a year or 2 years after the God, brain. It's 2 years after the Berlin Wall came down, after Günter Schabowski made his very interesting announcement at a press conference that was actually, I just found that out today in preparation. The whole event leading up to the fall of the Berlin Wall is pretty much just a similarly kind of minor puzzle pieces working together. It's a group of, reform political members of parliament in the East German parliament who are creating a subgroup to reform the immigration policy to West Germany that has been currently under debate. And so during the discussions, the lead of that party decided, well, there's not really a lot that they can change. So all he did was take out the temporary and, application period timing wise. And he was just kind of shortening certain sentences to just say like, well, let's just open it up then if we need to change something, because there's nothing really much else we can change otherwise. Superseding or like going over pretty much everything in the party order. So none of these operations would have been sanctioned by anyone if they had been read clearly. But since Günter Schabowski, the member of the Politburo, was already late for the meeting, the members at that meeting that evening were already late. Schabowski received the memo, the summary of the new immigration, didn't even read it, went to the press conference and just read aloud what he was given, not understanding that he just announced that there would be no more application needed for a visa, but people could just travel without reason to West Berlin. And the classical question by a Italian reporter who was also late because he was looking for a parking spot. Just wanted to know, like, oh, did I miss something? Wait, this is bigger than just like an announcement of updates for travel visa. This is like opening up East to West Germany. Uh, since when is this active? Oh, well, as Shabovsky looks at the notes and just reads out loud. But as far as I can see, it's active since now. Um, and this kicked off on the 9th of November, 1989, the reunification of Germany. And so suddenly you have a state that has been divided for more than 27 years, suddenly being brought together by a bureaucratic conundrum, error. Who knows? We're not sad about it. It's a great thing. And Germany at that point is in turmoil because you have different sides now bringing together what was divided for so long, brought up under different leaderships. And that's also kind of like, I think, a good reflection of the theme, the core ideas of like two entities fighting each other, right? You have the capitalistic West and the Soviet socialist Russia, on the other hand, both with their powerful influence, their struggle for power. And all of this leads to a, well, cheerful but also restless society in Germany. You have a rise in neo-Nazis that already kind of started to rise earlier because, yeah, there were certain ideologies that still maintained for some reason, and people thought it would be great. On the other hand, you have the rebellious leftists who become punks and occupy buildings and create like a state of anarchy that is much better than what they have right now. And so in this complete turmoil of kind of events, you drop the player characters. And yes, they're there, and you've experienced all of this, and you just experience like Germany open up, and you see that the East is basically crumbling and everything is breaking down. But then inside Germany, you have a rise of both sides of aggression, of all kinds of protests. You have unfortunately also like fascist and right-wing events that happened, xenophobic riots in various states. It is a powder keg, and I think that's a great kind of. I mean, I understand why Mikkel and Gunilla would be just like, oh, I don't need to add much. Like people, it's 1991. Just describe what's happening, right? Like it's weird. And yeah, I just wanted to ask you, have you brought this up already? Have you kind of influenced kind of the characters with the idea of their surrounding?
A little bit, yes, of course, but probably not as much as one could. So, so in the sort of backstory, etc., we've got a bunch of characters who are using the backgrounds that are sort of like prescribed, also suggested
maybe just can you explain a bit about these backgrounds and
oh yes,
the book gives?
Yes. So you have a series of characters that use the sort of suggestions for backgrounds, or the sort of seeds for backgrounds that are given in the campaign, which is really a little bit of an addition to the standard Kult Divinity Lost character creation procedure. You get sort of some suggested backgrounds to go with the different archetypes, which places them sort of in different countries and different compromised positions that will be I guess fruitful for building a character that fits into the campaign. So we have one character who's from like East Berlin, who has been in East Germany and has been involved in the system of Stasi and surveillance there, which is one of the suggested backgrounds. We have one who is a defector from Soviet, which sort of places him in his upbringing in Russia, and then he's come to Germany. Then we've got a slightly younger character who is born in West Berlin. And finally, of course, we need a Swiss character just to round it all off. No, actually, I mean, and that's one of the things that I guess I'm going to rely on. Sort of, if I had had a character with a connection to Poland, there would have been more Poland, right? And if I had had a character with some Yugoslavian Balkan background, that would have been, of course, tremendously fruitful for backstory and other themes that probably won't enter right now. But and we've done a bit of backstory and a little bit of. I mean, a banquet is a perfect place to have some political discussions in a polite way with your neighbor on the sort of the abstract take on the future and policy. But no, I'm hoping to do a little bit more sort of as we go on and as they sort of grow into their characters on what each of them actually feel about, you know, the country that they're from and how that has changed, or I guess in the case of Switzerland, pretended that it doesn't have to change even though the world around it is in turmoil.
I'm actually curious, since we already started to talk about our campaigns here, I think it's time to just go over to that point and reshuffle certain items. But tell me a bit more about these characters and the bringing them together. Did they know each other? You said you have
Yes,
Ecstasy, you
yes.
have a French legionnaire, you have an author, and
Yes. Ecstasy, who is now a book dealer, actually. So he is the occultist character paired with a backstory of spying on his neighbors, I suppose. We have the ex-Soviet character. He is a private sort of security contractor freelancer in Germany. And we have the Swiss foreign legionnaire who joined the Foreign Legion by the simple expedient of cutting her hair and pretending that her first name, Andrea, was actually an Italian male name. She now works in security in Germany as well. So the two sort of security professionals, they know each other, and they show up at the banquet because they work there. And then the author is, of course, invited. And the book dealer, well, he bought his invitation on the black market because there is an author who is going to attend the banquet that he really, really wants to meet. And they know each other. So I guess we have two little teams in my four-player group. We have the team literature and team sort of security, I suppose.
I see. And what is their connection to Magda? Because one of the kind of prerequisites, so it's not a prerequisite, but it's suggested that they should have some connection with that character.
Yeah. Exactly, and I think you could get away, probably. I don't know how you did this. We'll get to that, but with having a relatively weak connection to Magda, or having one of them sort of closely connected to Magda. But I sort of really tried to sort of. It would be great if all of you had if at least one of you, maybe two of you, had some really intense sort of, care for Magda. If you really, really felt really strongly about her. And we end up with the bookseller. Of course, he knew, or book dealer, he knew Magda back in East Germany when she was living there. They had a relationship when they were both in their mid 20s. Whereas our foreign legionnaire, Andrea, she knows Magda from when she first got to Germany, and when she spent a lot of time hanging out in Magda's bookstore, which it turns out, at least in my iteration of the Black Madonna, had a pretty extensive collection of women's literature, because that's what drew Andrea in. Then we have Hans Hoffmann, security contractor. He doesn't
Such a
know
German name. Fantastic.
he doesn't know Magda very well, but he knows Magda's little brother, Dietrich, who is in fact, of course, not Magda's little brother, but another child from this who's gone through the same same sad series of camps and mental institutions. But we don't know that yet.
Not the same or the same. Did you already kind of place them in the same camps?
From relatively early, yes, but I'm saying he's not from Leningrad, but he will meet Magda at one of the later stages. I have not exactly established. We have not exactly established where yet.
Okay.
But he has shown up in dreams already, or Dietrich.
Oh, okay.
And then we have the young author whose connection to Magda is, knowing her from literary soirees, I guess, the least intense connection in a way, but he at least knows who she is. And I thought it was quite important that they have sort of some connection, because that also makes the whole thing with the curse and why they are chosen make more sense to me. It's not just randomly that they happen to go to a banquet and shake hands, it's sort of there is a reason they were chosen, which the book also says that there is. So
exactly.
That made it sort of real for me that they are sort of chosen for this blessing.
Fantastic. About my campaign. So I have 3 players. We have a author of little children books, and who has a slight affliction that is not so keen with children. And we have a librarian or bookshop owner who also likes to dabble in the occult. And we have an ex-Stasi who works pretty much at a grocery store. And so all of them have a relationship to Magda, either through that Magda helped them out for the ecstasy during a difficult time in her life. We have the author who knows her through literary circles, and Magda approached him before because she was interested in his writing. The bookshop owner because she knows her from kind of obviously the circles in literature. And I think our first session took actually 2 sessions. So the whole kind of scene at the banquet, I think I spread out over 2, because I initially started with a focus on the socioeconomic kind of background of the characters, kind of starting from their apartment. Where do they live? What do they do? How do they get their daily lives? And I think that's one of the things that when I read the book the first time, both helped, but also in my GM style confused me. The 6 chapters the book is kind of put into, while at the same time certain chapters run in parallel, but they only run in parallel if you read to them and remember that they're running in parallel. So a lot of the things I think it is extensive preparation needed to kind of get this kind of actually understand it, to understand the campaign, but it is very interesting. And so one of the first things that I had popping up immediately was, I think, chapter 3, The German Autumn, which was for me, being part German, a clear memory lane. And I was like, yeah, I remember how the 90s were with neo-Nazis in small towns, and they were everywhere. They were not obvious. Sometimes they were not. Then you had the punks. And so for each of the characters, I had about an hour or something, half an hour, kind of their first introduction, their characters, a bit of describing where they live, who their friends are, and try to build up some NPC relationship to see them kind of interact with somebody. But each of these interactions was either disturbed or kind of at least touched by these circumstances. So my ex-Stasi, who works now in a grocery store, she lives in a very lower class area of Berlin, and she had to go past bus stops and whatnot to go to work and come back from work. And at these bus stops, there is certain people that kind of gather. And I had a group of neo-Nazis kind of like listening to loud music, kind of catcalling her, and then kind of walking and approaching her. They followed her home, which she kind of quickly ran into, but then she, it was a spur of the moment reaction, also character building, but like it was great because she just went home. But then over the next couple of kind of days, in a sense, I had, the Nazis kind of going towards her, kind of walking up and down the street, realizing that her um, landlady was a Portuguese immigrant. They started to harass the landlady. And so she brought the trouble home and she brought kind of escalation. And you already had kind of this mentality of like, oh, everything is already fucked up. Like we're not even doing anything, but like the state that we're in is awful. Um, and yeah, and for her, I had Magda basically pay for the invitation because she was sick and she didn't feel right, and she just wanted to see her and um, return a favor. I helped you out, help me out. I don't feel right. Something is wrong. But she just sent the invitation. No note, no nothing, and it just appeared on her doorstep. Um, so it was kind of curious for her. Why do I go to such an event? What is happening there? But at that time, it was for her the perfect escape mechanism because she had neo-Nazis basically surrounding her house, and she just wanted to get away from there. So what better than a trip to Hamburg and just avoid these people for a while? Um, and yeah, I then kind of bringing them together. Um, each of them had their kind of little kind of scene with their neighborhood. Others had punks and, occupy buildings, riots with the police, and um, others I already started kind of to dig into their dark secrets and to bring them up. But I did definitely more background just before we even brought them together, just for everyone to kind of be in a state of this is Germany right now. You have both sides. You have, punks in parks drinking beers, throwing beer cans around. Neo-Nazis doing the same. Then suddenly they clash and there's fighting. There's police suddenly like, out of nowhere, and nothing is safe in a sense. And I think that was a good precedence and background for everyone to understand. Like, okay, everything can happen at any time. Police are still partially leaning to either side. Some police officers like certain individuals more than others, certain mentalities and ideas. So, yeah, that was kind of something that I definitely would recommend investing at least a bit of time to reading into a bit of the background, or maybe listen to one of our later episodes where we go a bit of location based, give you a bit more deep dive of what these individual cities are. But yeah, to invest some time in giving the characters their room to play in. Um, and yeah, let them be confronted with, first of all, their reality before we drop something else on them entirely different. Um, and I think at this point, I want to do a quick segue. What is that thing that is dropped upon them? Because during that dinner, what happens, Martin?
Yes, what happens, right? And this is the first. I mean, we really, in a way, we really dropped into the deep end here because we start out with some real classic cult, like awful occult body horror that's gonna go on for like quite some time with like worsening symptoms and strange nightmares and pustules that doctors cannot see and so on, right? Because we start out with the dream curse. That is some kind of combination of curse and infection, right? It's an infection that spreads through dreams, I guess, is how it's sort of explained, and it's pretty gnarly. It doesn't start out too bad, but it starts out like a flu, right? And this is why poor Magda is looking so poorly when we meet her, because she is dying from this thing, and she will, of course, die horribly within the first half of the first chapter or so.
Exactly. Now, from who do we get that curse? Is it someone specific, or who's the bad boy?
Exactly. Who is the bad boy? I mean, this comes this. By the way, I don't know. I don't remember now if this made it to the English translation, but in the original Swedish version of the Black Madonna, which I reread recently, the first book is called Chagidiel's Blessing. Not curse, blessing. And so this comes directly from the Death Angel Chagidiel himself. Just one of the 10 higher powers that represent Inferno in cults, and he is the Death Angel of Abuse. That's who he is.
Oh. Yeah, pretty gnarly guy, I would say, and I think maybe we can already backtrack to what we said earlier. God is dead. And I think that comes back to the 1941 siege of Leningrad, when cannibalism, hunger, and famine kind of raged the cities, and Chagdigil, that little bastard, as we call him, created his kind of own harem of torture and power and abuse. He was banished, as you said, and now he has re-emerged. How did he re-emerge, or why does he re-emerge now? Is there any specifics on that?
I mean, so he's been, well, the I guess the seeds, or the sort of these his reincarnation has been living within these three of these children that were saved from Leningrad, and then make it eventually into Germany and become the three men who we meet, who are frightened by our player characters. They have had quite miserable lives, like torn between, I guess, their trauma and what these incarnates inside them are sort of driving them to do. And I guess now is sort of finally the time, for them to sort of reincarnate. And apart from, is there like a real triggering event in the external world? I mean, everything is growing more and more chaotic, obviously, and sort of in the
I think I'm not 100% sure if there's a specific trigger, just like the meeting with the characters triggers kind of the incarnate, but like I'm pretty sure that it is the idea that the nightmares that the three incarnates are getting from the player characters who are torturing them is kind of Chagdigil's way of creating kind of their incentive to deal with them, vice versa, incentivizing them to kill themselves or to be killed by them. I guess. To start this sort of like not just start, because the con has sort of been started already, right? Because they have been planting these doctored occult texts and so on, but to really set the plan in motion, I guess. It was just, I haven't thought of this before, but it sort of occurred to me now if there's anything in particular with because if you look at real world history and events, I guess the autumn of 1991
they said is a very special time. I'm wondering if we can imagine some nice synchronicity with real events. That means that this is like the right time to do it. But anyways, as it is written, yes, they need to be freed from their bodies, and our player characters are well positioned to be fooled into doing this.
Exactly, and I think that's the first trick of this Death Angel, to subvert his initial defeat by the Archon Binah, who initially thought, rightfully so, that she banished him from Leningrad. But unfortunately, it's the flaw of man and the willingness to save people that led to the release of these incarnates into the world, hidden and harbored in these bodies of these three people for such a long time. Now, we talked a bit about Binah, but we will go probably a bit more in detail about Binah, but like just in brief, Martin, who is Binah, and what is her role in the cult meta universe?
She is one of the archons, right? So the 10 higher powers that are associated with God, or the demiurge, who is dead, because again it's a dark game. God is dead, but and she is the archon of community, right? So she represents, the coming together in a way. And let me just say that I kind of love that for a large part of the Black Madonna, Binah is kind of cast as the good force. Except that when you look at what her servants do and how they treat people as, tools for achieving things, of course she does not strike you as particularly good force either. But maybe she's the lesser of the two evils here. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, because throughout the campaign, we do have some encounters with some of her lictors that she uses to kind of guide and steer the characters to their salvation, and help them find a solution for their eternal curse, which again is not really maybe what is on her true agenda, or at least what the lictors report as their true agenda. I think that's a nice kind of especially under the aspects of the crumbling Russian Empire, like Russian Soviet Union at that time, and you have the community of Germany rising as a whole. It's quite interesting to have these two kind of entities have this power battle amongst all of this. And as it is with Kult, a lot of this happens beyond the veil, hidden from most of us who are just blind to what is actually happening. And yeah, so once the players are then heartfully greeted, kissed, or handshook Magda after their grateful reunion, well, that's when the things go bad, and that's when things start to actually begin. Now, we said already quite a lot of kind of themes, topics here that we mentioned. In this first kind of broader aspect. So the core themes and the main kind of identities that characters will encounter. What would you say are those from your understanding of reading the campaign?
Yes. So I guess I should preface this by saying I think I probably lean relatively personal if we imagine the sort of personal political horror sort of scale here, and both are very important to the Black Madonna. But I probably lean a bit on the personal side. But the thing that sort of really strikes me when, and actually even more on sort of when I read a bit more in depth to prep parts. I mean, there are so many intensely sad and like just bleak little personal backstories for almost every non-player character of any import. More of it than probably even comes out in any run of the game, but some of them will obviously come out. Like, can name drop some of them, Kalenko's family, and all the um, our three Russians like Sasha, Anton, Philip. There, I mean, all of them. Of course, Magda herself, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really sort of long life courses of sort of sadness and misery, and yeah. So I guess if we're gonna list them off, sort of like a lot of like personal trauma, a lot of like old memories. Like a lot of this is way in the past, and everyone's still going to, throughout the campaign, we're going to relive it over and over again. We're going to relive, I mean, this even when the people themselves are gone, right? These memories are going to echo. So I feel like sort of like that, and the fact that history is sort of never over. Like in the Black Madonna, certainly history is still sort of ongoing right next to us.
That's a good point. Yeah, I definitely, I mean, core themes. Well, it's definitely loss. I would say also like identity, self-identity, in a sense of, as we are following along player characters who technically had their normal life with the good and the bad, which comes from the dark secrets, but they might have not experienced as much trauma as some others. And I think, yeah, as you said, the memory, the identity of core trauma with themselves, even like how to deal with encountering certain individuals, or even how to make decisions, because at several points during that campaign the players will need to make a decision, and I would say there is neither right nor wrong decision. It just, they will need to make one, but the consequences of those decisions are quite interesting. I mean, I had one of in my campaign now, the first time one of my players had to kill someone, not because he wanted to, but it was him or the other, and obviously he felt cocky and he felt like he could do it. Luckily, the dice were in his favor, and he executed a marvelous and surprising stealth kill, which I still don't get over with. But his escape uh, is good. Like, he felt like he's now on top of the world. And then shortly after, I let him kind of realize the kind of weight of everything. But then he also understood, well, yeah, but my dark secret is already there. And then I started to bring both of those into the weighing, and it became a very traumatic kind of event of slow realization of self-exploration and understanding. And obviously there's torture, there is body horror, there is abuse and violence to children. That is a core theme of the whole book, and these events obviously transpired not only through the victims but the perpetrators, to those that kind of tried to help them, to all of these individuals that the players encounter along the way, making every encounter with an NPC always different. Is he one of the good guys or bad guys? Or is if he's a good guy, did he try to do something to be good, or did he just go along and look away? I felt like my players became more. It was interesting to see their development of being open for kind of understanding, and then just became cold and rational of just following their own gains. Um, and seeing that kind of transitioning of their kind of dealing with trauma, dealing with crisis was very interesting to see. And I think you already mentioned that too. The first encounter with Magda was for some players quite emotional,
Yeah.
which is
Yes.
fantastic set off. Um, I mean, this is a great kind of obviously that's all we want. Like make an NPC so great and make them feel so connected to them, and then just and he's gone. Um,
And Magda is not, I mean, they have their ideas, I'm sure, but in our campaign, Magda is not even gone yet, right? Um,
she's somewhere in a Berlin apartment waiting.
yes, exactly. She's not in Hamburg. They figured that one out. And you said something there about, I mean, there. I think there is among the many things that are recurring in great masses. There is a body thing, I think a body theme that runs through the whole thing with sort of, well, pain and disease, and I suppose aging. And perhaps it depends on what age you and your player group is when you run this. Maybe this felt different for Gunilla and Mikael back in 1989, but for me running now with somewhat, you know, we're not that young anymore. None of us who are in this group,
Don't say that. No, no, you're traumatizing me.
and a friend suddenly showing up with much whiter hair and much more furrowed face
Mm,
than you are used to. And it's like, oh, you're ill, right?
mm.
That probably hits differently than it did. Um, did in
Yeah,
91, would have in 91 for me, certainly.
I,
99 or
absolutely.
whenever I could have played this the first time.
Exactly. I think also like I'm just trying to remember. It is the two survivors that the characters can meet in Berlin if they find kind of if they went to the clinic in Frankfurt on their order and they find the
Oh,
records
yes,
who
yes.
survived, Ethel and something. So two survivors who all of the time were Ethel and Lila. There we go. They are two of the remaining or living patients that survived all the traumas, same as the protagonists, Sasha, Philip, and Anton, and Magda. But they just live quietly somewhere in in Berlin, enduring the nightmares and traumas of their past. And I found it I found it very interesting and kind of also the players reacted very differently to kind of encountering them. So at that point, my author has already kind of almost crumbled away from humanity. Um, by now, in session 35, he is actually enlightened and he has become an abomination, which is absolutely true for who he is. There's no other way to say this, but he is an abomination. And but back then, he was tired of people lying to him, people trying to gaslight him, betray them. Nobody was giving them the cure. Nobody was giving them any clues or an idea. Everybody was just out for their own word. And then they find kind of the list of survivors and they find people that are still there. They cross-reference it, they find them, and then he calls them. And they're like, yeah, well, we could talk, but not on the phone. And he gets angry and it's like, no, I just need to know now. And so they hang out. And so, like, suddenly the other two are like, you just potentially killed the only lead we have to even understand what was happening. What the fuck is wrong with you? And suddenly, like, this simple scene cascaded into various different things. They got annoyed by him. They tried to repair their kind of relationship to Ethel. They called them again, tried to kind of ease them and try to understand their pain and suffering. And once they met with them and kind of understood their perspective as victims, as true victims who are just, side characters, like this one, what is it, one page in this 160 page book. Um, they became quite interesting figures, NPCs that portray, I feel like, a significant part of all the core themes. And it depends on how you approach them that will change them, open them, will create different relationships or give you more ideas of what to do next. Um, it's very interesting.
If I recall correctly, this encounter has not happened in my campaign yet, but the place where they live in a not particularly nice part of Berlin, right? And I think it's painted as being rather unpleasant, right? It sort of smells bad or something like that right outside there. And then you come in to like, and they offer, cookies and coffee to sort of talk about this. It's very
to go over this whole, yeah. Oh, that reminds me, one of the interesting things that I had too, especially since you're up for it when it comes to Berlin and Magda's apartment. One of the creatures that I added kind of from the Kult lore were the Nachtkäfer. So coming to Magda's apartment in Berlin, her car is downstairs in a garage or somewhere, and I wanted to kind of see where she traveled, where she moved, if she has something in the car. And so I made this beautiful, obviously not creepy scene at all, where kind of a football just kind of bounces down the staircase, and then suddenly it's kind of just disappearing into this black corridor that leads to the garage. And they hear this kind of insectoid noise of feet and everything. And once they come to the garage, one of the characters notices kind of this bug-like thing in the corner moving and crawling around. It was devastating for them already because they didn't know that much, but they were just frightened. And this encounter, I let them, the Nachtkäfer kind of disappear then, but then I brought them back at Ethel's and Lila's place again because it is such a deep, disturbing place. And I think actually, yes, this is where even the campaign book notices that a Nachtkäfer might just drag one of the homeless ones in the staircase away. And so like you had this reoccurring theme of this, something is really weird about this building. And then you come upstairs and they're like, good day, my dears. How do we do? I just made some tea. She made some cookies and this old style 90s apartment or 70s apartment of these two elderly neighboring friends that went through one of the worst traumatic experiences. I feel like one of the things that you definitely need to or should do in order to kind of create a bit more just a bit more feeling, I guess, is always give this kind of the light in the dark, keep the two-sided theme, right? Maintain it throughout because it's so beautiful if you can maintain that throughout at locations, events, always offer something kind of that is a bit out there. Oh, it's creepy and beautiful.
The Nachtkäfer really is. I mean, it's one of the quintessential like cult beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not really, doesn't really have any ill intentions, but it's very unpleasant.
I think I want to come back a bit to also the tone for the players. For us as a GM, or for those GMs who are watching, listening, and might want to offer this to their players. Um, what should they be concerned about? How should they even advertise for that game?
Yeah, write a content warning list that is longer than the rest of the
Well, I
game
guess you
posting,
could
I
write a
suppose.
content warning list that says not included are clowns. Um, and then
Yes. I guess I don't know how I would. So, I mean, a lot of my gaming happens in a sort of a semi-public forum, which is
mhm.
the um, illusion server. But this one is not. This is with people I played with quite a lot before, and sort of who thinks in person and so on. So I guess I didn't have the problem of writing a post that would work in a public forum. Instead, we had a fairly long discussion about what's in here and what
Mm,
sort of
may I
emphasizing the sort of.
may I ask about that discussion, maybe?
Yes,
How did
yes,
you approach that?
absolutely. Yes, so we talked about it. I mean, first of all, I guess they knew some things about the campaign because, again, they convinced me to run it. But then we had like a sort of series of discussions about like these are some of the key things that are going to be there. You know, there will be quite a lot of themes of abuse and children who suffer. That is sort of kind of the thematic sort of bedrock that the campaign rests on. And there will be quite a lot of disease and body horror and so on. But then on the other hand, there are some other things where I guess that are, provocative in tabletop role-playing games that the Black Madonna from the campaign side necessarily doesn't have so much of, right? I mean, you said clowns, but also there are not necessarily a ton of sexual themes, unless you want there to be, or sort of so. And I also felt that some of these things can be sort of at least with veils, sort of with being able to fade to black and sort of cut away from things. I think you can probably deal with a lot of the more more graphic and explicit parts. You don't need to show them on stage necessarily all the time. But I mean, you need to probably, yeah, you need to be prepared for that. There's going to be like a lot of real world history misery. I think that's the big one for me.
Since you mentioned them, and for GMs maybe that have not used them or have not played Cult before, what are lines and veils?
Oh, yes. It's a very nice terminology, but it's not really that pedagogical, is it? There would probably be a more clearer way to say them. But I mean, a line is a line. It's something we don't cross. Like, so it's a theme that we don't do. So yeah, it's not going to be used in play. Not going to be in the play at all. We're just going to step away from it. Yep. Whereas a veil is something that is a topic of any kind there, that it can be part of the game in a broader sense, but we're not going to describe it sort of in detail. We are going to cut away from it. We are going to sort of fade to black, as it were. And exactly how you do this, I think it really depends a little bit on the group and how you like to do things, and exactly how in what way this topic is sensitive to you, right? Because sometimes it could just be, we say that it happens and then we cut to the morning after, or in some cases it could be sort of, I think it's a common one with different kinds of violence that don't go too graphic, right?
Yeah. I feel like one of the things that you can say on that too is like, do the cut of black, but then ask the character if they want to describe what impact that had on them. So yes. What they took away from them, because then you get the same amount of info, but from their perspective without crossing any further lines or stepping over any lines. So, what did you maybe tell your players as a preparation for the game? Did you give them anything particular, or did you just say make those characters based on the section in the book? Did you give them the section of the book, or
I did, but only actually during the session together. We sort of looked at
okay?
it, but we didn't actually do. We didn't do actually do any reading of like rules and preparation before of that, like rules the sort of campaign text before.
Oh no, no, not about the campaign decks. Specifically about the player character
Yeah, yeah.
generation because
But it's sort of like
there's a
I mean,
whole
there's sort of
yeah
like a campaign
yeah
chapter for like the modified
yeah
modified player.
exactly
We actually only looked at that during the sort of first
okay.
session or session zero. But we had talked a bit about the sort of themes and the ideas before, and happily for me, it turned out that they did, I would say, all of them, and in particular, two of the characters really set on backstories and elements there that I couldn't have asked for anything better, really.
Fantastic.
So we have some, you know, some a really bad upbringing with some hatred for foster parents that sort of
Hmm.
festers in one of the backstories, and in the other we have a maybe not so bad fundamentally upbringing, but a huge clash with the family about where to go in life and who I am and identity that leads to a lot of tension with, a sibling that is like the only point of contact and so on.
Hmm.
Which I think goes very well
It
ties
does.
very well into the sort of community and abuse themes in the,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Specific. I mean, from my perspective, despite me knowing the players that I chose to run the campaign for, again, no RPG limits, which made some. I have to say, after now 35 sessions, it is the only campaign that even me made sometimes cringe and be like, okay, this is like crossing almost my line. Um, it is disturbing, but it's also interesting to see the characters kind of creating such an immersive experience. Um, it is not that, they're intending to kind of just create a weird scene, but it's how the character develops, and it is disturbing to kind of see and hear, events unfolding. Um, but for the preparation, I also did a small template with a few couple of questions, that were generic before I even asked about like what is their relationship to Magda and so forth. But they were like, what is your relationship to families? Like, what is it to your family, to your own family right now? What is it to your past family? Do you have any children and so forth? How was your upbringing? Um, and kind of try to explore a bit, just with a few sentences, how they imagine their characters. And then from there, we kind of started on in session one, kind of in a narrative character development of doing the initial scenes with like flashbacks, calls from their parents if they're still alive, and or bad dreams or something like that to kind of just flush this out. But I think again, underlying theme is harm to children and kind of this massive, yeah, dark and foreboding um, presence that is kind of the Black Madonna, I feel like. Are there any tips that you would say that you could give maybe GMs to focus on if they know, for example, I mean, obviously, I would say don't offer this game or the scenario to players who are not comfortable with harm to children because there's simply no way to avoiding 95% of the campaign that is happening. But are there any tips that you might can come up with right now that you would say you could circumvent certain of those topics?
just it occurred to me you said something that the good point there. I should maybe have thought of that myself as well. This is a campaign where there is absolutely room for the players to make the GM very uncomfortable as well. And the Kult as a game in general has that mechanic. So, if you, dear listener, have lines and veils yourself, don't be shy of offering those up to the table front and center immediately. I think one that sort of occurred to us a bit without going into too much detail is sort of the squickiness of some of the body horror stuff that goes on. That it's sort of with this dream curse turns eventually pretty bad, right? With these dream worms or maggots from somewhere eating the player characters, even though most people cannot see that, and so on, right? And that is, I think, so think of it, even if you don't have like a sort of line and veil that is more sort of, you're more strict about it. I guess I think of it a bit as a dial, like where should we set the squick dial, and it's worth keeping track of that, and actually maybe checking in with people now and then and having some mechanisms in place, like an X card or something like that, because that can be a bit icky here and there.
I think it's one of the campaigns where having at least an X card on the table or safety tools in virtual tabletops, if you have them, are helpful. Just encourage your players to be open about and just say X, and make sure that everybody understands X means stop, no further. Now, I do wanted to ask, because it's one of the core preparations, I think, too, cell phones.
Yeah, so I don't know. I say no to cell phones. Not necessarily because I'm not necessarily a subscriber of the view that cell phones and modern technology absolutely ruin horror, and you can't do classical horror scenarios anymore, because of course you can, right? Like the cell phone can be a great part of technology malfunctioning or being perverted in different ways. It's a great source of weirdness, but I think I think for me, no. There is something about that the memory of the 90s. To me, it's before cell phones were ubiquitous.
It is also like, you can have a cell phone, and if you take it off the charger, it will last about 2 hours, 3 hours, maybe even longer, depending on the brand. But yeah, they're large, they're clunky, They are hand format, as we call it in German, handy. But it is kind of interesting. For one, I was saying, like, sure, go for it if you want to have a cell phone. However, it is expensive. If you go abroad or if you go in a different country, it is basically unpayable. Like one call and you're bankrupt. But also, like, you can utilize this if the players want to. It does require more effort and so forth. But yes, I think one of the things, it is the 90s. James, think about how you want to run this and just make I would say, a top-down decision. So you just decide, and this is the theme if you don't want to deal with it. Because otherwise there will be too many opportunities. The players will say, can I just call somebody right now? I'm just going to go outside, just a quick call. Unless you want the 90s banker, I would say consider your options. Now,
I would say for the... Sorry, no,
please.
No, you're right. For the sort of like I can totally see if you're playing like what's the careerist archetype, right? I can totally see you having one of these like car phones that is like a huge thing that you lug around.
And your Mercedes 510 SL or whatever the heck the cars are.
Exactly, that would be amazing. And I guess the first like classic Nokia phone comes in '92. So if the campaign stretches really far, you can have one of those.
I don't think my players will survive that long. But yeah, again, have a think about it because it is one of the things that could happen and could come up. And I think you as a GM should make a decision beforehand if you want this or not. One other thing that I want to maybe touch as we are on the kind of GM player preparation thing is dramatic hooks. Martin, tell me about dramatic hooks. And for those of you who are not maybe aware about Cult or haven't read enough about Cult, what are dramatic hooks and why should you ignore them as a GM?
So the dramatic hook is one of two mechanisms, with some exceptions, for getting experience points and advancements in Cult Divinity Lost. The other mechanism being end of session questions, where you together answer 3 questions and then determine how much XP you get from that. And the advancements, I think, I know a lot of people who play Cult without using the advancement system at all, even for some really long campaigns. This group, they've been playing another campaign where they don't use those mechanics at all. They just sort of do advancement kind of narratively, sort of, it makes sense that I learn more about the real world, hence my soul might go up. But I think, at least for our run, it would be. I've told the players I'm going to be very disappointed if most of you have not become enlightened by the end of this. So there are 2 ways to get that XP. One is through the questions, and one is through these dramatic hooks, which are like little tasks that you set for your character, or you and the group and the GM kind of set together, I guess, in a sort of negotiation process. So it sort of says something like, my dramatic hooks would be to investigate Magda's disappearance, or confront my stalker now that I think I have his address, that sort of thing. And you get the experience point if you try to do this, or if you make some meaningful progress towards doing it, and then you don't have to succeed is the idea, but it's sort of a way to incentivize the character to do things. And mm-hmm. Why you should ignore them? Well, I mean, you should
that was a joke, but
you should use them, I guess, if you want another mechanism to give XP in such a way, and you should use them if you fear that you and the players fear that the characters are going to be a little bit aimless, I guess. You want to sort of codify that. You can ignore them, I suppose, when there are otherwise very strong narrative motivators for doing things, right? And I mean, in the Black Madonna, there is also for one thing, there is this dream curse that is constantly on you and sort of threatening your life if you don't do something about it. And around you, the world is constantly on fire, and there are Nazis, and there are Russian nationalists with guns, and there are people chasing you and reading your mail and interfering with your business and so on. So you are probably pretty busy. But maybe that's a way to get extra XP out of that busyness, possibly. I don't know. What's your take on this?
Well, first of all, ignore them was a joke, but also, as you mentioned it rightfully, it can also indicate to a GM if a character kind of steers off in a wrong direction. So if you see him asking or creating dramatic hooks that are maybe just a side thing that you brought up, or something that doesn't really pertain to the story, but they want to investigate it further, that is a great point or great option when after the game you set dramatic hooks for the next session. Maybe that's one thing. Dramatic hooks are meant for the next session. So in the first session, you start out without you can start with dramatic hooks, but usually you don't know what's happening. So you start out with no dramatic hooks, but at the end of the first session, you can say something like, I want to actually figure out who that guy was who was sitting next to Magda. It's a simple goal. It might be difficult to obtain because, lists of attendees or something are hard to get to, or other people have made those lists disappear, or whatever. Um, but these obtainable goals should be something, ideally something between 2 and 3, as I go by advice by Matthew Sanderson, who gave me that at some point. Should be something obtainable within a session that you think your character can possibly achieve, assuming that the story goes your way. If it doesn't, it is the extra bonus that you get. It is the achievable, unlocking the extra achievement. If you can steer the story, great. You are creating your own story. But again, if you see the players are asking, "Oh, we met this waiter in the first episode. We want to know who he's married to." You can be like, "Listen, maybe there are other things that are more important. We should go over the things that you know. What do you know?" I think that is a great opportunity, especially for a campaign that is as intricate, as weird, and as not really telling the players much. They need to investigate pretty much everything because all they know is they're infested with something. Um, they don't know if there's a cure. Once they start to find somebody, he will tell them that, "Oh yeah, that same thing happened during World War One, and pretty much half of the Russian army died of it." Well, that's not going to be a great help. There's no cure for it. Well, that's even worse. Um, you are starting to kind of trail off into territories where you need to get the players invested into focusing on the important things, trying to figure out. And I think dramatic hooks are precisely for this campaign important and great, that you as a GM have an opportunity to kind of say, "Look at that dramatic hook," maybe even in private messages or in a private conversation. Maybe we take that one off. Like finding a cure for the disease, yes, it's a dramatic hook, but it might be obtainable until next year, December. I don't know. We'll see. But be realistic and help the players to kind of guide a bit also where the story is going. I think that's what I wanted to kind of focus in, because dramatic hooks in Black Madonna, I first underestimated their power of them, but then over the course of the campaign, I realized, oh, I can use them. They are very helpful. They help me to help you, but not in a direct way without kind of literally pushing you into something. So yeah, I think that's one of the things. About pacing, for the game itself. You've had 4 sessions so far. Where are you at right now, if I may ask?
Yes, so at the end of 4 sessions, not that much has happened. The banquet has happened. Our player characters have been ill for some time, because that's the first acute phase of the Dream Curse infection. And they have failed to meet Magda, obviously, who they were planning to meet. And they have gone to her apartment in Hamburg. She has one in Hamburg, one in Berlin, and found that she is not there, but that she has left an alarming mess behind. And now, in the finals, like in the 4th session, paranoia sort of started ramping up as they realized that they have been photographed and surveilled at the hotel where they were staying. Ooh. So that's 2 days of events, I suppose, which to me feels like we're moving at a breakneck speed. But
yeah,
we'll see.
Blobel is already on their tails, eh?
Yes.
How did they find the photographs, if I may ask?
Yes, so in the first little glimpse of him is given during the night, right after the banquet, right? Mm-hmm. And through some combination of very lucky dice rolling, it turns out that our security man, Herr Hoffman, actually managed to catch the photographer in the act on a rooftop. The photographer escaped, but Hans turns out to be a good shot, and he manages to shoot this person's camera and then sort of shoot at him so that he runs away from the broken camera that falls to the ground. And from the film in there, they managed to see some photographs of our cultist bookseller and our author leaving the banquet. So that's how that happened. Which is already, I feel, leaning into the sort of covert secret agent spy ancestry of the campaign in a way that we haven't really talked so much about, but that is a recurring sort of subordinate theme, I suppose. Sort of like slightly James Bondish action.
You're right, Mr. Bond. I've been expecting you.
But actually, in terms of themes and sort of emotions, I think it also works out pretty well, because the occultist is sort of stalked by his past, and of course he immediately freaks out upon seeing these photographs.
That fantastic cliffhanger. I'm excited to hear more about it, and I think we're reaching the end of our first series here. We might haven't gone to everything that we promised, but well, that's us talking about something that we like, and so we stay off course. We still hope you enjoyed it, maybe took some ideas, inspiration from it, and well, join us maybe for the next session, which we'll think about what exactly this will be about. But we definitely want to do a bit more of a deep dive about locations, NPCs, about the arch nemesis, Chagdigil, and also maybe the not so arch nemesis, Binah. We want to also do a bit more of a deep dive into kind of the first session, the opening hook, how to bring everything together, maybe a bit more in detail, and many more things. If you have suggestions, ideas, please let us know. You know where to find us, or comment below. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this. I would say thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
That was a very enlightened and enticing conversation starter for the Black Madonna, the campaign by Kult Divinity Lost. Martin, again, if people want to scream at you about all the false claims that you brought up, where can I find you?
Yes, the best place to scream about the Black Madonna is probably the official scenarios channel on the Kult Elysium Discord, which is not like official run by Helmgast, but it's run by some really, really dedicated fans, and there's a lot of cult knowledge in there. Or at the Illusion Gaming Discord. I am open to shouting there as well.
Fantastic. I'm David. You will find me either way as well. Most likely on Illusion, where I respond faster. But otherwise, anywhere where you can find a guy called Bitburg Chef on Discord servers and social medias. So thank you very much for watching, and have a pleasant day, and see you hopefully next time.